Based on Peter Turner's memoir, Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool follows the relationship between 28-year-old Turner, played by Jamie Bell, and the complex Academy Award-winning actress Gloria Graham, superlatively played in this picture by Annette Bening in 1978 Liverpool. And what a fascinating story and movie this is. Liverpool's director, Paul McGuigan, whose feature film credits include the inventive crime sagas Gangster No. 1, which I still have nightmares over, by the way, and Lucky No. 11 now joins us on the film's behalf. Paul, thank you for...
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I have nightmares about lots of my movies for the wrong reasons. So.
Really? Yeah.
Not this one.
Gangster No. 1, though, was brutal.
It was a very hardcore look at... Well, we always thought about it as being, if you're going to do something about somebody who's really nasty, you got to go there, right?
Yeah.
And it was Paul Bettany's first real role,
right? Yes, it was.
And he's electric in it, and yeah, it was great.
We had Malcolm McDowell join us for that.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
He's brilliant. I was telling the Malcolm McDowell story the other day to a friend of mine that when I first went to get Malcolm to be in the movie. I went and met him in Santa Monica, and I'd flown all the way from Scotland to see him, coach, by the way. And we were in a restaurant, and we were talking about the part. And he said, I'm going to have to go to the toilet. And it was a really shishi restaurant. It was full of these women at lunch, you know. Right. And Malcolm then burst out of the toilet, and he just turned around to me and goes, who y'all fucking looking at? And he just started to be this guy.
That seems amazing. Like so totally him.
He was amazing, and I just fell in love with him.
So a great actor, too. So this movie here, it's quite the departure, in a way, right? For a filmmaker who's demonstrated a particularly strong talent for handling crime and drama narratives.
Yeah, I mean, it is a departure in one way, but it seems, for me anyway, it seems a natural progression for me. I really wanted to do something that I only wanted to make a love story, you know. And there's two love stories that happen in this movie. There's the one between Peter and Gloria, and then there's one between Gloria, Peter, and the family, you know, and I really liked that and identified with it. And I loved the book. The book's a very slim volume. It's only like 160 pages or something. And I read the book and the script almost simultaneously, you know. I was kept flicking through to see what was happening in the book, and I loved the way that the book was told in a very fluid manner through memory, and I knew that was kind of going to be interesting cinematically to do that.
It's interesting because the book is kind of this rumination on memory, really. I think that's how it occurred to me anyway, and I think the film captures that. But did you know anything about? I was surprised because I knew nothing about Gloria Graham, her private life, except what I saw in the movies, and I've seen all her films. So that was like a revelation to me. Did you know anything about her before you signed on?
I didn't know anything about Gloria other than, as you said, the films that she'd been in, and then I went back and looked at those because Gloria was very private. She was an incredibly protective, private person. In the film, at the end of the movie, she gets her Oscar and she says, "Thank you very much," and she walks off, which I thought was amazing.
What I thought was interesting is she said thank you, and that was it. And then she left.
She left, yeah.
It's like,
and she had a borrowed dress on, and she did her makeup, and she was a very interesting woman. So therefore, I did begin to ask a lot of questions to Peter about Gloria, and of course, Annette really wanted to know a lot about Gloria, even though our movie's not a Gloria Graham biopic. It's about the love affair.
But it's really, really interesting because I think a lot of the biopic flavor, there's a layer of it that's unspoken and unsaid that comes through, or at least that makes you want to go look further. Because I did, and I was fascinated by her private life, the marriages, the fact that she married her second husband's son, and actually she had a son by Nicholas Ray, I think, and then she had
Tony Ray,
more kids by the son, which was, I mean, she kind of lived this unconventional life. Was very concerned about her looks. I thought it was interesting that she apparently had so many plastic surgeries that her upper lip became paralyzed. It's just interesting. And a lot of that, even though it's not really talked about or really investigated in the movie, after I read about it, after I saw the movie, I thought, well, it's all there.
It is there, and it's also, you know, there's two layers of that storytelling as well. It's there through how Annette approached it. You know, she didn't want to do an impression Gloria Grahame, because we both felt that probably a lot of people wouldn't know who Gloria is anyway. Mm-hmm. And then what's more interesting is that you're seeing the film through Peter Turner's eyes, and those were the days before Google, before you can actually Google anyone.
Right.
And so that was interesting to me, that as an audience, you begin to find out a little more and more as he does. You know, even it's from the barman saying, you know, is that Gloria Grahame you've got? And he goes, apparently. Oh yeah, she won an Oscar, right? And he's like, what?
Yeah, I think she was an Oscar-winning actress.
Yeah, and so as an audience, you start to get to know her through his eyes, and that was a lovely way. Because to me, I think the film, if the film works, people will leave the theater, and the first thing they'll do is Google her, and then they'll find out all that stuff that you just said. Is that what you did? Yeah.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah, and which I really liked. I liked that, and then also the way we shot the film was very much tipping our hats to the genre that she worked in. So we did a lot of back projection. There was no CGI in the film at all. Everything was through the camera. We did, you know, when people were driving cars, that was all back projection. The beach was all back projection.
That was interesting, you know? that I read that you did a lot of rear projection, which is how they did it before they did the front screen projection.
Well, you know, I watched In a Lonely Place, which is one of my favorites.
That's a great movie.
And there's a great scene with Humphrey Bogart and her on the beach.
On the beach, yeah.
And so I knew I had a beach scene to do, and I was like, oh, I'm going to just do it the way they would have done it. And we just did the back projection, you know, and the rear projection. And then I knew that, and then, you know, in the Big Heat, you know, there's a great apartment. And so we built her apartment in New York based on that. And we just did stuff that was good for us to kind of pay homage to who Gloria was and where she came from, you know. Because actually, it's a stripped down Gloria that we find in 1978 when we find her. It's a Gloria that who's lost her career really, you know, who still loves to act, and she's doing provincial theatre. She did a lot of kind of dodgy television, some good, some bad, you know.
I think she was in an episode of The Outer Limits.
She was, she was, and so here's a Gloria that for all intents and purposes, unless somebody tells you, you would never know she was a film star. And I love those days of film stars when you never really knew what they had for breakfast, you know. Now, of course, we know everything about everybody, right? Whereas then, they just looked at them on the silver screen, and you thought up, or you imagined what these people were like, you know, and that's what made them exotic and sort of unattainable. And I think she always liked that, and I think that's what lies about her as a person. I think that she would, because I was talking to Peter Turner about that yesterday. I was saying, when I was in Los Angeles yesterday, and I said to Peter, would Gloria have liked this movie? And he said the funniest thing. He went, well, I'll tell you what she would have liked. She would have liked you, because her mum's Scottish and she loved everything Scottish. And he never answered the question.
Oh boy.
I was like, whoa.
Did that make you crazy?
No, but I was like, I kind of hoped that Gloria was helping us out, but I kind of hoped that she didn't also like the fact that we were prying into her life a little bit. But we were very conscious to not get sensational about her life, because we don't really know. Nobody really knows, to be honest. Right. Even Peter didn't really know much.
Yeah.
You know? And so it was important for us as filmmakers and as storytellers not to get sidetracked by the kind of gossip element of her life, you know.
You mentioned Annette Bening not trying to imitate her, I think, which was really the best choice to make, because in so doing, I think she evokes her. Oh,
she does. I mean, she really does. I think Annette, I did an interesting thing, is I took a picture of Annette in the Grifters,
yes,
and a picture of Gloria from one of her movies, and it was a similar look they had on her face, and I sandwiched them together. I got a piece of acetate, and I put the two pictures, and I showed it to Annette and to Barbara Broccoli, our producer, and they were amazed at how her bone structure and everything is so similar. So I just felt we didn't have to do much. You know, we put she had a little thing here in her top lip that we gave her, so that she had that, as you said, that kind of frozen top lip. But she really didn't need to do it. She's such a wonderful actress in there that she kind of evokes and she haunts, you know.
Well, you know, speaking, can you talk about? I mean, you may have just answered this, but can you talk about your process of working with actors and what you might have done specifically to facilitate what you just described and that did on screen?
Yeah, I mean, I've always gone. When I first started out as a filmmaker, I thought I had to act being a director because I have no form of reference other than what you see in movies.
I hope not Otto Preminger.
No, but that's exactly what it was. It was like Sunset Boulevard was rattling around in my head.
Right. How am I supposed to be on this?
Yeah, and I was like, and so I used to look at my watch and go, okay, half an hour, I better go and shout at somebody. You know, I better go and be annoying. I better go and be a nuisance. Or I better be heard, if you like, you know. Whereas what I've honed in over 20 years of working in this business is to be quiet, is to observe, is to trust your actors, listen to them, listen to what the story is, listen to your characters, because you have to really be a student of the characters that you're working on. And so sometimes it's quite alarming for actors, I think, that I never say very much, you know. And when I do, it's because that's when I start to direct. But I'm directing all the time because I'm actually observing and I'm watching.
Do you find that because that's your method, do they come to you? Is that sort of like your clue that maybe this is when I should speak up if they're asking me like, well, what should I do here? What do you think is best?
I think, you know, like for working with somebody like Annette asks a million questions. She asks a million questions, not necessarily of me, of herself and how she wants to do. And she's a student of her characters. And as a director, I believe you have to be a student of your actors. You have to understand them. You have to get to know them. You have to really observe them. Mm-hmm. And that's the great thing I love about my job is I'm a kind of voyeur in this world, you know. And I like to observe and I like to... And you know, it's also where you put your camera. And because I was a photographer, and to me, the camera is the most powerful weapon that any director can have, you know. It's a great storytelling element. And I think some people don't really understand that very well, is that, you know, your lens choices or where you put the camera and how you move the camera can tell everything about a scene, you know.
Absolutely.
And so that's my job, is to sit and work that out as each scene goes through. It takes a lot of concentration for me. And so I don't need to go in and be all lovey-dovey with everybody and jump around and say how wonderful they are. Because to be honest with you, you know, I remember working with a Morgan Freeman, and Morgan said something really interesting to me. He said, you know, I'll give you 2 takes, and then you really have to tell me why I need to do any more.
You're going to ask for a third.
So he was giving it over to me as if it's in your hands, but I'll do them. I'll certainly do them, but you got to tell me why I'm doing them. Because there's no point you saying, oh, by the way, Morgan, that was great. Can you do it again? That's not direction. That's somebody who goes, I don't know what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. You know, and then so that always stayed with me, because I used to do, when I first started out, as well as shouting at everybody, I used to do like 20, 30 takes. Now I do 2 takes as well. I don't really do any more than that, you know. And there's lots in this film. Like there's a dance sequence in the film that we never rehearsed, we never talked about. All I did was I bought the song. I quite literally bought the song the night before. And
that's interesting, because it's one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, it's one of the best scenes in the film, right? Yeah. And that has no direction to it whatsoever. So there you go, do you know what I mean? Of course, I got them all there, and we choose the song, and we had the methodology of doing it. But there's 2 scenes that are handheld in the whole film, and that was one. And then there's one where, the big scene where she's splitting up from him, and she's throwing him out of the house. Because I didn't know what the actors were going to do, so I was just like, just put it on your shoulder and we'll shoot it. We'll see what happens. And with actors like Annette and Jamie, you can do that. And you have trust in them. And that's what I'm saying. If I don't have to say a word all day, I'm doing the best job ever, because it's actually working for me anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
You mentioned Jamie Bell, the best thing I think he's ever done.
Oh, he's amazing.
But incredible actor. Yeah. Just the arc of his character is amazing. Vanessa Redgrave is in a magnificent scene.
Oh, she in the film? I keep forgetting.
Right. What was...
That was a great day, I've got to say. That was a wonderful day for me, you know.
She plays the glorious mother in a sort of a dinner scene.
Yeah, to have Annette and Vanessa and Jamie and Frances Barber as well, who's a great actress, to have them all just sitting around the table was kind of a joy. Sometimes I
thought you were going to say surreal. You know,
it wasn't so much surreal as in I kind of smiled at myself when I walked on set. I was like, this is going to be a good day, and it never disappointed me. Because Vanessa's just. She's cookie, right? She's wonderful. She's a legend, and Julie Walters worked with her as well. She was amazing. She's funny as hell. And then you realise that Julie Walters is like everyone's favourite relative. Everyone thinks they know her. Every time you're with Julie, everyone goes up and says, "You're my favourite person in the world." And you're like, oh, "What's it like to be Julie Walters? It must be so strange." So it was great to have a real high pedigree of actors and to enjoy them.
I was telling Mark on the way up, because I was thinking about Gloria Grahame as an actress, and she did make a name in black and white films. I mean, when you think of her, when I think of her, I think of the black and white films. But it's interesting because as a child, my first exposure to her was in a Technicolor extravaganza, The Greatest Show on Earth. She played like an elephant woman kind of trainer who was married to this abusive guy who was abusive to the elephants, and she was saucy and sexy and very tart in that movie too. But I remember being really impacted as a child, and I love that movie as a child. But her performance stood out.
Really?
And I just thought that was an irony because, you know. And one of the other ironies, I this is maybe interesting for film buffs, but she was nominated. Gloria Grahame, I think her first Oscar nomination was for a film called Crossfire in 1947. Yeah. And it's interesting because she lost the Academy Award that year to Celeste Holm for a movie called Gentleman's Agreement. Celeste Holm created on stage, very famously, I think she even won a Tony, for Adu Annie.
Oh, really?
Which is what Gloria played in the movie. Which I did, another one of those like Hollywood nice. Like weird ironies, you know. And another thing too I wanted to mention, again, for people that have asked me this, I always thought her performance in Oklahoma as Adu Annie was very strange. I thought, why is she talking so strange? Well, apparently it was because her upper lip was paralyzed and she had cotton or tissue stuck and it affected her speech. I was also. She
wasn't very. What I read is she wasn't very happy doing that movie, the Oklahoma film. I didn't think she ever felt comfortable in that.
Yeah, I read one source where she actually physically attacked Gene Nelson or something.
Oh, really?
Persona non grata. I guess she felt very insecure. And
she did, and I think, you know, it wasn't long after that she kind of didn't work very much, you know.
Yeah,
it's a cruel place, Hollywood. It can be a very cruel world, you know, but very fickle as well. Obviously, we all know that. You know, one minute you're up, next minute you're down, and vice versa. And I think that she just couldn't deal with that very much, you know. It wasn't really her shtick, you know, it wasn't her thing.
Did you interface a lot with Peter?
Yes. Peter, I was with Peter yesterday. Peter's become a really great friend to us all. You know, he's a very passionate man, and he wears his heart on his sleeve, and it was wonderful to have him around, because a lot of people were saying, well, do you really want the author to be there? I mean, really? And I was like, yeah, because he's the fountain of all our knowledge. He's the guy we have to go to ask, to make sure we're not doing it wrong, you know. And Barbara Broccoli, who's the producer, who produces the Bond movies,
yes,
she's a producer on this movie, and her and Peter are great friends. They've been great friends since Barbara was 17 years old. And so it was actually Barbara that got Peter to write down his memoir, because he could see how affected he was by Gloria's death. Yeah. And then this story, when it became a book, went to Columbia, it went to working title, it's been all over the place. And then Barbara grabbed it back, and it's taken her 22 years to make it.
My favorite quote from that book, it sort of sums up, I think, a demonstrative aspect to Gloria's personality. She said, she did. She said, regarding Ronald Reagan to Peter, she said, purportedly, I can't stand that Ronnie Reagan. I'd like to take my Oscar and shove it up his ass.
Anyway. I love the fact you grabbed that quote.
Yeah, right. And in summation here, because we just have a couple minutes, but you said, we were talking that the movie has an interesting background, which really the movie doesn't go into, because it's about the end of Gloria's life in her later years and her relationship with Peter Turner, who later wrote the book about his relationship. But you said in an interview, you said, I didn't want to tell the story of who Gloria Grahame was until Peter Turner found out who she really was.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that in summation here?
Well, as we said earlier, I mean, it's really... It's not a bio of Gloria Grahame, but it's a discovery of her. It's the beginnings of it, the discovery. It's like Peter fell in love with Gloria Grahame, not Gloria Grahame film star. He fell in love with the person, and then of course, then she did become very fascinating to him when he knew that she lived next door to Bogart, and she had, you know, that was fascinating to him, obviously, and it was quite an attraction. But I really want the audience to feel like they're discovering Gloria through Peter's eyes, and it's really important. Because you asked me about Peter Turner earlier. What was interesting, it was Peter gave us this story. He gave us the story, and he gave us the permission to tell the story. Mm-hmm. And then as a novelist rather than a screenwriter, he had to take a step back. And then we had a personal screening for him with Barbara, myself, and Peter, that we were only people in the whole theatre. And Peter sat behind us because I knew why he was sitting behind us. He didn't want us to look at him watching the movie. Right. And he cried like I have never, ever heard a man cry in my life. It was coming from his stomach. Mm-hmm. And when there's the scene where they take Gloria down the stairs in the chair, and he lost it. And I was really worried. I was worried. And then he stood up at the end of it, and he gave me a big hug, and he said the nicest thing. He said, "You've just given me my story back." You know, and that's what you can do as a filmmaker. It's all you can do. Is that he gave us the story to begin with, and it now belongs to him again. You know, it's his story, and that was really important that we're telling Peter's story as well as Gloria's story. You know.
I just want to point out too, for film buffs and people that are interested in technique and craft and everything, you have also in relationship to what you just said, there's a wonderful style to this picture. What I would call just this transitional style. We don't have to talk about that. I want film goers to kind of watch for that, because I think it beautifully serves the story without calling attention to itself and draws us deeper into the movie. It was really brilliant. Really.
Thank you so much. Yeah. That means a lot to me, because I did try really hard to not be the one showing off in this movie. Yeah. But there is a point where the fluidity of memory has to be put onto screen, right? Because, a lot of the times memory is a cinematic convention that requires you to have an establishing shot, and then you have to go into the thing. Right. Whereas I really wanted the actors to walk through their memories, to walk into their memories or walk out of the memory, back to the present or through the timeline, if you like. So that was really important, and I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's a great example of how to use the tools of film.
Yeah. And also
make film unique.
But also to work really closely with the production designer, because it required sets back to back. It required walls to move live on camera. It required the actors to jump out of bed and run through a hole in the wall and then be in another scene because the camera doesn't cut. It was fun to do, but it was very theatrical, and I felt that was quite. Mm-hmm. I thought that was quite appropriate for the story we were trying to tell.
And I just want to end this by saying there's a great scene in the movie too, where Gloria and Peter go to see Alien, which is also worth the price of admission. We're just going to leave it at that.
Thank you, so you're very nice.
And we've been in conversation with Paul McGuigan. He's the director of Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. Check it out, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was a pleasure.
You bet.